Hello, everyone, and welcome to another episode of Founders Grid, sponsored by Gaper.io. Today we have Jose. Jose is the founder and CEO of Bizmoni Corp. Jose, welcome to the show.
Thank you so much.
So, give us a brief background about yourself before starting Bizmoni Corp, then we'll come down to Bizmoni Corp.
I'm a serial entrepreneur for 40 years now, and eventually I had an exit when I was 30. Um, I've been building and selling businesses for quite a long time, but eventually I became a business angel, which I've been doing for more or less 26 years now. And I was a VC for 3 years. But saying that, my heart goes for being an entrepreneur. I find it much more exciting to building up businesses than I've found always doing the investments because you are not so involved with the whole setup. So the question I was put today is that what would be my advice for building up a business? Well, what I can say is that today it is as hard to build a business as it was 40 years ago. Obviously, a lot of things changed. We become much more electronic, and some areas definitely it's become more easier to be able to kick off. But the amount of work that you need to put to set up a business is exactly the same as it was 40 years ago. You need to have a set of skills and a set of mindset in a certain direction, and then eventually combined, if you have that experience with business building experience. If not, then it's much harder. The statistics, what they say is that 85% more or less on average, depending country by country, of startups fail in the first year, and only 0.5% stands after 6 years, more or less. So the problem is that most of these startups, when they kick off, they lack of the needed amount of money to build up that business, which typically takes a few years. That's one point of the scope. The other point is that because they don't have the experience, they are not well prepared, and bootstrapping, doing the research, finding all the ingredients that you need and the answers to the challenge is quite harsh. And you will be confronted with a problem, which is that you need to have much more time than you were calculating. And that time costs money. So if you don't have that money available to make it happen, then you basically are on the edge for a close down. And that's why these numbers are so harsh. Now, we at Bizmoni, we are working on helping exactly these type of entrepreneurs or founders that have no alternative today. Typically, they would go out and raise funds. But in fact, what happens is that the funds available, they only reach more or less 0.003% of all demand. Now you may ask why. And the reason is that only 1% of all demand will ever be selected to raise funds. The investors typically, what they do is they look for innovation and they look for profitable businesses. And since you are a new business, you are not profitable. And if you are not innovation, you don't fit in that category. So basically, there are no funds for you. So either you go for debt or you're not able to reach those funds. So this is the status today in our society. Now, it may sound a little bit disastrous, but it's not, because you can bootstrap all that just without any money. So if you're able to bootstrap it and you're able to kick off that business by yourself with a team, and you don't need to pay all that payroll and all the cost that is associated to it, then obviously you can kick off that business. Now, it has nothing to do with COVID because, in my opinion, COVID basically accelerated the whole business setup, which is already quite electronic today. So it doesn't make that much of a difference. Obviously, if you want to kick off a restaurant or a agency, like a travel agency or similar activities, then you have a very harsh time during COVID. But you can always do it online. Nobody says that you're not able to do a restaurant business online, right? You can always do delivery at the door. So there are many opportunities as long as you can pass those obstacles.
Sorry, I was kind of like. So, no, that's a very interesting thought, and it's a good one. So, okay, I'm sorry, we're trying to articulate it towards making it much more relevant due to COVID, right? So,
Yeah,
uh, what are your thoughts, about, you mentioned right now, and fair to incorporate COVID within that. So what advice would you give now to young entrepreneurs who are on the first startup? It can be early stage or maybe series A, B stage. So what advice would
I
you
could
give?
say what I would do. Okay, maybe that helps.
Definitely, definitely.
If I would be an entrepreneur today, I definitely would go for a business which would be online. It could be even a mix with online and physical. Like if I would like to produce something or make a certain brand around it. But definitely, I would not set up any business which would not be having a online presence, especially because today we are living on a completely digital world, and everybody is standing in front of the screen, and that screen can be a laptop, smartphone, or a tablet. And most of people today, they are in front of that screen, let's say at least 5 hours a day, okay? Whatever you do. So your sales channel needs to be digital and needs to be online. Now, there are a lot of opportunities, digital wise and online. You could even create businesses that are already more or less running, like a franchise model, and they are quite inexpensive. The advantage is if you go for that, then obviously that learning curve that I was explaining before, it's much shorter because you get a full running package. And the amount of money probably that you need to invest is also much lower because that business more or less needs an X amount of money, but you don't need to pay the whole roadmap that you would normally have to do in finance to figure out all the ingredients. So you get it in one shot. So definitely that's what I would do if I would be a young entrepreneur. I would just go online, check, and there are so many opportunities available that I would say, you can kick off a business almost out of nothing in, 1, 2, 3, or 4 weeks. So that's the plus that I see. COVID basically accelerated the whole process that everybody goes online and does remote work. A lot of the remote work that today is running was predicted to be happening in about 5 years, maximum 10. Now, COVID forced that everybody has more or less got into remote work instantly. Some companies were forced to make an evolution of 10 years in one shot because they are already behind in their development in the infrastructure they had, like 5 years behind. Now, COVID forced them to pick up that delay that they had, plus they were forced to look 5 years ahead and immediately take that setup, that would happen normally in 5 years. So that's where I see that there is a big change.
What initially happened, what were your thoughts when it came down to telehealth or co-workings, and which industries would, in your mind, you were betting on, okay, they won't work, but these would work?
Okay, so you need to think in a mindset of an investment manager. So the question was if I would see any difference in investment between
Yes.
March and now. Okay, so if you have the mindset of an investment manager or a private investor, you will look for opportunities. Even during the COVID period, even if the markets go down, there are still opportunities. There's an old say that says you make much more money when things go bad than you make when things go well. And the reason is because those opportunities that lie in front of you, they get multiplied because not a lot of competition is available in probably in a certain niches as we are very fast. So as an investor, definitely I would look for alternatives, and I would definitely not uh, invest less than I would have planned before. I would just look in a different area, which would be much more profitable. It's obviously I would not invest into a hotel or a airline or a travel agency or all those industries that have been hardly affected because until they are able to recover, it will take some time. I would definitely look in something that would be remote work um, related, more or less, artificial intelligence related, um, healthcare on a distance. So everything which would be more or less a newcomer to increase our comfort living from home and working from home. That's where I would look in.
Back to my last question. You know, post-COVID world, once the vaccine is out and once the other things are out, you know, what's the new normal gonna be like? Do you think it's going to be a hybrid with the companies? Because we're already, uh, let me articulate it better. So, pre-COVID world, there was a lot of debate going on that the two coasts, the East Coast and the West Coast, controlled the startup funding market, right? And there are many VCs in the Bay Area who've tweeted that, you know, if the startup is 1 hour away of drive, we don't invest in them, right?
Mhm.
But now everything is remote. When you
Mhm.
talk specifically remote, for a company in San Francisco, their team can be in Austin, New York, Canada, London, Brazil,
Mhm.
Egypt, Lebanon, Pakistan. So remote is remote now. So do you think that we're gonna enter an era where the opportunities for the global founders is gonna exponentially increase, where they had a disadvantage of not being on the coasts?
Yes, and somehow no. Okay, so the yes will be like this. They would be more open to receive, um, let's say, invites to look into an opportunity, either by mail, okay, or by LinkedIn connection, or by, let's say, Medium. Okay, in the past, those connections were made on fairs, right? Those fairs are shut down, so there is no way you can approach the investors on a fair. So you can go to webinars, but essentially the shift has been gone from the fairs into the webinars and into a more direct approach, which was already running. But suddenly they have more time to look into that stream. In the past, there would be more running around, eventually traveling around, and the time to look into the direct approaches would be much less. Now, uh, if you say that they would invest in Russia or Brazil and other countries, I would say no. And the reason is because every investor has an investment preference. Most of the investors like to invest close to home. They like to more or less be able to control and understand what's happening with the business, and they want to have their return. So it's very hard for an American investor to control what's happening, for example, let's give it an example, maybe an Indian company, which falls under a completely different legal system. It's very far away. And obviously, he has much less control than you would have into, let's say, a company which will be set up in a North American environment. Okay. On the other hand, these investors also typically have an investment criteria in what they like. So an investor that normally invests into tech, and in tech you can even split it in different areas like healthcare, financial, etc. Okay, normally they don't invest in real estate because they understand tech business, they know how they can make profits out of it. Also, the return on investment in tech is much higher if you hit and strike than it is in real estate. And a real estate investor typically doesn't understand tech, as an example. Okay? If you go to healthcare, right, the investment cycle is very long. The return is very long. So it needs to be a specific investor that wants to invest in that area, that knows how it works. So in that essence, I don't see any change. Okay, the investment criteria will stay the same. The investment zones, more or less, will not change that much. I think they will be open to accept much more candidates, even from different countries. But at the end, probably they will invite them to set up in the US, okay, and then invest in that company in the US, which already was happening, by the way, before COVID, more or less. Okay.
Makes sense. Yeah, I really enjoyed the call. I really enjoyed the podcast, Jose.
I hope you liked it.
On the show, um, I'm pretty sure we could have spoken for another half an hour, but it's my marketing team strategy that we have to keep them short, precise, to the
Yeah.
point. So thank you so much for being on the show. Take care of yourself and stay safe.